Altogether Ooky is brought to you by Seinfeld brand odor-absorbing insoles. They make your feet smell like nothing. This is Altogether Ooky, made for horror fans in the SATV Studio in Salem, Massachusetts. I am Clovis Black. That's not my real name, but call me Clovis. You may have heard that Nathaniel Hawthorne, who was born in 1804 and died in 1864, was born Nathaniel Hathorne, but changed his name so that people would not know he was the great-great-grandson of Judge John Hathorne. Judge Hathorne is notorious as the only judge in the Salem witch trials who went to his grave without repenting for what he did. The only problem is that there's no proof to back this up. The author changed his name certainly, but no one knows for sure why he did so. If he really didn't want anybody to know about his great-great-grandfather, wouldn't he have changed it to something completely different? The explanation that's simplest and, therefore, most likely, is that people were already pronouncing it Hawthorne, and he just changed the spelling to match the pronunciation. Did you know that unicorns are mentioned in the Bible? Well, sort of. Obviously, the original texts that have been compiled into the modern Bible did not actually use the word unicorn. They were written in languages other than English. Whenever the text used any word that meant any kind of one-horned animal, that word was translated into English as unicorn. They may have actually been referring to rhinos, or a now extinct breed of ox that had one horn. There used to be a great big quadrupedal mammal with a single horn coming out of its head. Modern scientists call it Elasmotherium and say that it probably existed in the same time and place as humans. This is a picture of it. Was this the unicorn of the Bible? The answer is shrouded in the mist of time. That sounds a lot better than hell if I know. Okay, here's another old comic book story I downloaded from comicbookplus.com. This is an amazing website you should definitely visit. They've got an incredible variety of old comic books that are now in the public domain, and you can read them right online. From Web of Mystery, September 1955, here is Deep into Darkness. 3 men tramp through the lonely wastes of the great North Woods. They appear to be hunters, do they not? But no. They are the hunted. Oh, looks like there's going to be a lot of double exclamation marks in this thing. Some miles to the southeast, another band of armed men breaks up into small groups to scour the great forest. These are the hunters, and their quarry, the 3 men tramping through the woods. Meanwhile, well, you got us fixed up good this time, Fingers. You would have to let that bank clerk in that jerkwater joint recognize you. What are you yapping about, Mouse? We got ourselves a nice haul. Okay, so that guy's nicknamed Fingers and that guy's nicknamed Mouse. You know what? I want an old-fashioned nickname. Nicknames used to be a lot cooler than they are now. From now on, everyone just call me Lefty. Oh, wait a minute. I'm right-handed. That's not going to work. Never mind. The mouse is right, Fingers. What good is dough out in this kind of country? And us with a posse on our tails. Listen, Rock. I always got us out clean and sweet before, ain't I? Then just leave it all to me. You better think fast, Fingers. Yeah, them guys on that posse ain't gonna stay far behind. Hey, look it! See that cabin? Well, I don't know who's in it, but that joint is going to be ours before long. What do you know? I gotta hand it to you, Fingers. You got all the lucky breaks. I'd have swore there wasn't no cabin for miles around. Now, quiet. Look, there's some old guy in there. Yeah, and he looks like he lives all alone. Let's go in. Hiya, Gramps. All alone, eh? Eh? Why, howdy, gentlemen. Hunting, I suppose? That's right, Gramps. We're hunting for a place to park a while. Well, you're welcome here, gentlemen. Anyone who belongs to the great outdoors can always find a friendly chair with me. We figure to make ourselves mighty comfortable here, Gramps. Alone. Be careful what you say, and much more careful what you do, stranger. The great god Pan protects the forest people, human or otherwise. I call upon Pan to wreak vengeance upon you all. Aw, nuts. You superstitious guys give me a pain. Go easy with him. We don't want him after us for murder, too. What did the old duck mean by this great god Pan stuff? Who knows? I read about him someplace once. An old Greek god who's supposed to protect forests and animals and stuff. Well, he won't bother us now. Let's wrestle up some grub. Yes, you do that. Get to the grub wrestling, please. So, the three fugitives have prevented the lonely woodsman from getting help. Or have they? Now they set out for game, for even criminals must eat to keep themselves alive. But for how long, with the curse of the great god Pan upon their heads? You know, Fingers, I don't like this idea of the old guy giving us the business of a curse like that. Don't be a fool, Rock. Now listen to me. You go up that hill. Mouse, you'll go up that un. I'll wait for yous here at the crossing. Okay, Fingers, I sure hope a couple deer or three come around. I'm a-getting awful hungry. An hour later, Rock is plodding along the trail, but it is much colder in the woods now. I gotta get into some sort of shelter and get warm. I'm freezing. Hey, and another lucky break. I deserted the sawmill. I'll hole up in there for a while. So Rock enters the door of the sawmill to find... What? Watch. Hey, what the... That log! Didn't see it. Oh, my leg! I can feel it snap. I know, it's broken. Fortunate, wasn't it? That Rock fell into a pit of soft, wet sawdust. He might have been more seriously injured. But I can't get up. My leg, it's killing me. It may take days before someone comes. Meanwhile, here he lies deep in the woods, unable to crawl for help, and fearful he would starve that the law would claim him. Help! So it looks as if Rock will pay for his crimes. But did the vengeance of the great god Pan cause it? Well, it was a log that trapped him, and Pan is the guardian of all trees and forests. Help! Meanwhile, the mouse has taken his position along a game trail, a couple of miles in the opposite direction. I don't like this. It's too quiet. Hey, I heard something. It sounded like baying dogs. Down that way. Maybe the posse. Yes, the mouse was right, but the posse is still far, far away. However, not far from where the mouse is standing, a great stag rears his head, listens, sniffs the air attentively, and, aroused to action by the baying of the hounds, he charges up the game trail, fear and anger welling up inside his heart. Maybe that's what I heard. A stag. There's enough meat on him to last us for weeks. I'll step back into the trees and pick him off. What in the heck? But as the mouse steps back into the, protection of the trees, he and his rifle become entangled in the scrubby branches. These cursed branches! If only I can get my rifle free. Confused, frightened, the huge beast suddenly lowers his head to charge the only visible enemy he can detect. Bless Aunt Susie! He's coming at me! What'll I do? The stag charges at Mouse, who, in trying to escape, finds himself on a dangerous ledge. He too is trapped, a prisoner of his own wrongdoing. Surely this is nothing but an untimely accident that befell the mouse. It couldn't be that the great god Pan was wreaking vengeance. Or could it? He can't reach me here. After all, Pan is the protector of the forest, and of all the animals who dwell therein, and Mouse clings to dear life to the edge. At that moment, Fingers, standing at the intersection of the trails, starts to move off in the direction Mouse had taken. That sounded like a scream coming from the mouse. I wonder. It was him. Mouse. What happened? Hey, Mouse. Get me out of here, Fingers. I can't reach any farther, Mouse. What was that? Bloodhounds. That means the posse's on its way. I know the bane of bloodhounds anywhere. I gotta get away from here, but pronto. Them dogs will lead them guys up here in no time. But maybe they'll stop when they find the mouse. Fingers, don't leave me. Wonder what's down there in that sawmill. Maybe something that'll help me make good my escape. Minutes later. You're a sight for sore eyes, Fingers. I can't move, my leg's broke. Now you can get me out of here. Busted leg. I can't carry you, Rock. The law's right on my heels. Fingers, don't leave me. I'll starve. I gotta save my own skin. But how could that have happened to Rock? The great god Pan. I gotta get out of this section. When they find Rock and the mouse, it ought to hold the posse up long enough for me to scram. I'll wade through this swamp. That'll throw them dogs off my trail. Where's that music coming from? It sounds sort of weird, like some guy playing on some kind of pipe or something. Now what? This swamp is muddier than I thought. I better go back before I get stuck. But for Fingers, there can be no more turning back. You've heard the word panic, haven't you? Well, that word comes from ancient Greece, for only the great god Pan could create panic in the forests. Could he also create panic at the disco? I can't go back. It's too soft. I guess it ain't no use. Gotta think of something else. Wonder what... Yay! Now I know. It's quicksand. I can't go forward. I'll have to go back. But I can't go back either. I'm trapped here. He can't move. He found a firm ledge of ground in this quicksand area, but he can't go in any direction. It was only a short time till the posse reached the scene. After they'd found and saved Rock and Mouse, while some of them were bringing the fugitives to justice, well, that takes care of the three thugs, boys. Funny sound them reeds make when the wind's blowing through 'em, ain't it, Sheriff? Sounds just like music. Yeah. Say, fellers, let's drop past the hermit's shack to make sure those crooks didn't hurt him. A few minutes later, we find the sheriff and his men entering the shack. That's funny. Doesn't look like anybody's here. Look, Sheriff, this trap door's been moved. Yeah, the dust's off the handle. Anything under there, men? There's sure enough something under here, Sheriff. Yep, it's him. He's all right. Good thing. He never did a mean thing to anybody in his life. The only thing I could never figure was him always talking about the great god Pan. But that was harmless enough. Sheriff, take another look at the hermit's face and then look at this picture tacked on the wall. Did the woodsman know? Did he wait patiently because he knew the criminals would be caught? And he himself would be saved? No one knows except retribution. The great god Pan the old man talked about. A dead ringer for him. The end. A Revolt of the Gods by Ambrose Bierce. Read by Clovis Black. My father was a deodorizer of dead dogs. My mother kept the only shop for the sale of cat's meat in my native city. They did not live happily. The difference in social rank was a chasm which could not be bridged by the vows of marriage. It was indeed an ill-assorted and most unlucky alliance, and, as might have been foreseen, it ended in disaster. One morning, after the customary squabbles at breakfast, my father rose from the table, quivering and pale with wrath, and proceeding to the parsonage, thrashed the clergyman who had performed the marriage ceremony. The act was generally condemned, and public feeling ran so high against the offender that people would permit dead dogs to lie on their property until the fragrance was deafening, rather than employ him. And the municipal authorities suffered one bloated old mastiff to utter itself from a public square in so clamorous an exhalation that passing strangers supposed themselves to be in the vicinity of a sawmill. My father was indeed unpopular. During those dark days, the family's sole dependence was on my mother's emporium for cat's meat. The business was profitable. In that city, which was the oldest in the world, the cat was an object of veneration. Its worship was the religion of the country. The multiplication and addition of cats were perpetual instruction in arithmetic. Naturally, any inattention to the wants of a cat was punished with great severity in this world and the next, so my good mother numbered her patrons by the 100. Still, with an unproductive husband and 17 children, she had some difficulty in making both ends cat's meat, and at last the necessity of increasing the discrepancy between the cost price and the selling price of her carnal wares drove her to an expedient proven eminently disastrous. She conceived the unlucky notion of retaliating by refusing to sell cat's meat until the boycott was taken off her husband. On the day when she put this resolution into practice, the shop was thronged with excited customers, and others extended in turbulent and restless masses up 4 streets, out of sight. Inside there was nothing but cursing, crowding, shouting, and menace. Intimidation was freely resorted to, several of my younger brothers and sisters being threatened with cutting up for the cats, but my mother was as firm as a rock, and the day was a black one for Sardasa, the ancient and sacred city that was the scene of these events. The lockout was vigorously maintained, and 750,000 cats went to bed hungry. The next morning the city was found to have been placarded during the night with a proclamation of the Federated Union of Old Maids. This ancient and powerful order averred through its supreme executive head that the boycotting of my father and the retaliatory lockout of my mother were seriously imperiling the interest of religion. The proclamation went on to state that if arbitration were not adopted by noon that day, all the old maids of the Federation would strike, and strike they did. The next act of this unhappy drama was an insurrection of cats. These sacred animals, seeing themselves doomed to starvation, held a mass meeting and marched in procession through the streets, swearing and spitting like fiends. This revolt of the gods produced such consternation that many pious persons died of fright, and all business was suspended to bury them and pass terrifying resolutions. Matters were now about as bad as it seemed possible for them to be. Meetings among representatives of hostile interests were held, but no understanding was arrived at that would hold. Every agreement was broken as soon as made, and each element of the discord was frantically appealing to the people. A new horror was in store. It will be remembered that my father was a deodorizer of dead dogs, but was unable to practice his youthful and humble profession because no one would employ him. The dead dogs, in consequence, reeked rascally. Then they struck. From every vacant lot and public dumping ground, from every hedge and ditch and gutter and cistern, every crystal rill and the clabbered waters of the canals and estuaries, from all the places, in short, which from time immemorial have been preempted by dead dogs and concentrated to the uses of them and their heirs and successors forever, they trooped innumerous, a ghastly crew. Their procession was a mile in length. Midway of the town it met the procession of cats in full song. The cats instantly exalted their backs and magnified their tails. The dead dogs uncovered their teeth as in life, and erected such of their bristles as still adhered to the skin. The carnage that ensued was too awful for relation. The light of the sun was obscured by flying fur, and the battle was waged in the darkness, blindly and regardless. The swearing of the cats was audible miles away, while the fragrance of the dead dogs desolated 7 provinces. How the battle might have resulted is impossible to say, but when it was at its fiercest, the Federated Union of Old Maids came running down a side street and sprang into the thickest of the fray. A moment later, my mother herself bore down upon the warring hosts, brandishing a cleaver, and laid about her with great freedom and impartiality. My father joined the fight, the municipal authorities engaged, and the general public, converging on the battlefield from all points of the compass, consumed itself in the center as it pressed in from the circumference. Last of all, the dead held a meeting in the cemetery and, resolving on a general strike, began to destroy vaults, tombs, monuments, headstones, willows, angels, and young sheep in marble, everything they could lay their hands on. By nightfall, the living and the dead were alike exterminated, and where the ancient and sacred city of Sardasa had stood, nothing remained but an excavation filled with dead bodies and building materials, shreds of cat and blue patches of decayed dog. The place is now a vast pool of stagnant water in the center of a desert. The stirring events of those few days constituted my industrial education, and so well have I improved my advantages that I am now chief of misrule to the Dukes of Disorder, an organization numbering 13 million American working men. Ambrose Bierce was born in Ohio in 1842 and became one of the world's most famous writers of short stories. He was a soldier in the Civil War, so he may have written horror as a form of catharsis. In addition to being a writer of fiction, he was a highly successful journalist and poet. In 1913, he went to Mexico, where he disappeared. He may have joined the Mexican Revolution, but nobody knows for sure. Hello? Oh, I'm glad you called back. Yes. The story you submitted, the one about the guy who gets trapped on that Indonesian island? It's good, and I'd be glad to read it on the show, but you have to make some changes to the monster first. The monster's just too unrealistic, and that makes it difficult to suspend disbelief. A lizard that's over 8 feet long, that I can dig, but this thing is saliva that gives you a horrible infection as soon as it bites you. Also, the saliva contains an anticoagulant that makes you bleed out faster. I mean, seriously, this thing couldn't possibly exist. What? Komodo dragons are real? No, there's no way something like that could be real. It's totally unbelievable. Hey, wait, aren't you the one who submitted a story about a furry mammal that had a tail like a beaver, a beak like a duck, was venomous, and laid eggs? Look, just stop submitting stories unless you're going to be serious. The urban legend of the Green Man is weird, even for an urban legend. It tells of a man who walked through the woods at night with no face, but that's not the really weird part. His only features were a mouth and a hole where his nose should have been, but that's not the really weird part. The really weird part of the story is that it's completely true. Raymond Robinson was born in the Pittsburgh area in 1910. When he was about 7 or 8 years old, he went out on a trolley bridge to get a closer look at a bird's nest. The poor kid got horribly electrocuted and lost one arm, both eyes, one ear, and his nose. Okay, I'm about to unmosaic this picture of him. You've been warned. By all accounts, he was just a regular guy who lived with his family and liked to go for walks through the forest at night. To earn money, he made items such as wallets and doormats to sell. He passed away of natural causes in 1985 at the age of 74. Now there are stories of his ghost walking along State Route 351, glowing with an eerie green hue. If you are creepy and kooky, mysterious and spooky, go to altogetherooky.com to find out how to submit to the show. All sorts of creative types are welcome. So that's it for another episode of Altogether Ooky. So far nobody's sued me for stealing their catchphrases, so I may as well keep on doing it. Dynamite!